What is going on, everybody? What is going on? What is going on? What's going on, everybody? Um, Welcome back to another week of NFL picks. Obviously, we're almost at the end of the season. It is almost the end, week 17, the penultimate week of the regular season is here. Um, First and foremost, Merry Christmas Eve to everybody. Hopefully, you have a good day today. Have a good day tomorrow. Obviously, there's going to be some football on tomorrow. So that definitely a treat to have football this time of year. And just enjoy what's left of the holidays, man. Obviously, we got today and tomorrow. New Year's coming up in about a week. It's but we got football to keep us company. And without further ado, let's get into it. Um, Last week I had my best week of the year. I went 14-2. Absolutely amazing week on my end. Only two losses were, I believe, the Detroit game, which once again, that's what I picked as my upset of the week, and I shouldn't have done that. And I think I picked Jacksonville, and I was originally leaning towards the Raiders. So definitely, but other than that, basically went perfect on the week. So yeah. So starting off here with our Christmas Day games live on Netflix. First one here, obviously, the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, 14-1 with a win. They will lock up the number one seed in the AFC. They go to Pittsburgh and face the Steelers, who, I really feel like with Pittsburgh, it's kind of, you definitely get the feeling that they've lost their mojo. They lost, really the magic that they had that wheeled them in a lot of those games earlier in the year. 2 wins. They are in a little bit of a slump as of lately, but you really get the feeling that once again, Kansas City, I think a lot of people would expect them to win this game, but I just feel like it's probably going to be, honestly, considering the fact that, these two teams and their records kind of shocking. It is definitely going to be a back and forth game. But I actually got to give this to Pittsburgh here. I get a weird feeling that Pittsburgh is going to come out and win the Chiefs. Obviously, coming off of that win versus Houston, but still, it's late in the year. And as I say, the Chiefs can't continue scooting by in these close games. These are two teams that, really are accustomed to close games. But I feel like you got to give Pittsburgh. Well, I just got to give Pittsburgh the win here because I think if they can really come out and get that running game going, and keep the ball away from Mahomes, and it is in Pittsburgh, I got to give the Steelers the win here. So I'm going to give Pittsburgh the win, and they wrap up the AFC North with a win here. Next game here, the second Christmas game in Houston, the Ravens and the Texans. It really feels like with Baltimore that you look at their record, and I say this every week, you really honestly could say they could be 12-3 right now. But, just a couple of those losses that, have really hurt them and currently have them sitting, on the inside out looking into the playoffs. But as far as Baltimore goes, I do feel like they're the better team here, and I feel like they're going to pick up the win. It's just the matter of, I feel like with the Ravens, it's just I do get the feeling that they are definitely the better team in this one. I feel like when you look at Baltimore, um they're just the better team. In Houston, I just yes, they've won that division. Obviously, there really isn't much competition there, but Houston, you just get the feeling that they're not who they were last year. They, have had a little bit of a slump. And obviously, it being in Houston, you would think could benefit the Texans. But I got to give this to Baltimore. I feel like that once again, this is just a prime time spot for Lamar Jackson on Christmas Day to come out and get the win. So I'm going to give this to Baltimore. Next game here, Thursday Night Football, the final Thursday night game of the season. Seattle at Chicago. The Seahawks are trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. They're going to need that and a little bit more help to do so. And Chicago, that Hail Mary play just absolutely broke that team. And, ever since that, it's really been all downhill. They haven't won a game since then. I believe they're now on a 9-game losing streak. And I've tried to think, well, Chicago's going to snap out of it. Chicago's going to snap out of it. At this point, you got to throw your hands up in the air. There's really no hope for the Bears. I'm going to go ahead and pick Seattle to get the win. And I really feel like the Bears, it's a rough situation to watch because a lot of people give Caleb Williams slack, but I do think that with it being his rookie season, I think there's definitely pieces there for him to succeed. It's just everything else around the Bears, it's just not working. And Seattle's trying to keep their playoff hopes alive, so I got to give them the win. Next up, we have a Saturday double header. And New England, they gave Buffalo, they stuck in that game versus Buffalo. They before Buffalo would come back and win. The Chargers with a win, they can wrap up a playoff spot. The thing with New England is Drake May is, I think, a really good quarterback. He is definitely the answer for that team. But I think there's a lot of questions outside of Drake May. And really, is Gerard Mayo the guy? What are we doing, with other parts of the roster? They definitely still need to upgrade at positions like wide receiver, running back, pretty much everything but quarterback you need to upgrade at. But I do think they can keep it in a close game. I do. I don't think New England's just going to come out and lie down. But I am going to give this to the Chargers. I do think they pick up the win and clinch their ticket to the playoffs. New England, I think they could definitely stay in the game, but the Chargers are the better team. I got to give them the win. Next game, the 4:30 game, and this has big playoff implications for this one. The Denver Broncos at the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously for Denver, they had a big opportunity on Thursday night when they were up 21-10. And they wound up letting the Chargers come back and win this game. But with a win, they are still in the playoffs. But with Cincinnati streak, this is really the biggest must-win of the year for them to stay alive going into the final week of the year and hope some things can fall into favor for them to potentially sneak into the playoffs after the season they've had. And you just go and you look back on all those losses they had, at the start of the year and say, if you could have just honestly have won one of them, then maybe it's a whole different scenario we're talking about right now. But it's going to be a close game, but I'm going to pick Cincinnati to win. I think Joe Burrow has no doubt been playing like the best quarterback in the league. Everyone's talking about Josh Allen and Lamar for MVP. But if this Cincinnati team was not so bad, then I honestly think Joe Burrow might be the runaway for it. Um, it is a tough spot because Denver, we have seen show up in these must-win positions, but I got to give this to Cincinnati. I just think that they're going to make things interesting going into that final week of the year. And then the third of the triple header on Saturday, the Arizona Cardinals at the LA Rams. The Rams have an opportunity to actually clinch the NFC West this week. Arizona's been eliminated from the playoffs. And I think a lot of people are going to look at this game and say that this is a Rams game to win. They wrap up the division here. But the thing with Arizona, and they've kind of always been like this, all year. I don't think a lot of people really expected a lot out of them. But one thing is for certain is they've pulled off a few upsets you really haven't seen come. So I think this could be another spot where the Rams come out potentially sleeping a little bit. They're feeling a little comfortable, but Arizona, even a team that's been knocked out of the playoffs, but we know are now playing spoilers, come out and get a narrow win to ultimately save Seattle's season and make things really interesting in Week 18. So give me the Cardinals in this one. Heading into our regular Sunday 1 o'clock window. And it's a little bare bones this week. Starting off here with the Cowboys and the Eagles. This game was originally supposed to be the 4 o'clock game, but obviously the big question for Philly is Jalen Hurts, and will he be able to play? But I'm going to say, I feel like if there wasn't one factor in this game, I would absolutely pick the Cowboys to win this. But the fact that Philadelphia has Saquon Barkley, this just feels like a Saquon spot. What's going to end up happening. So I'm going to pick Philadelphia here to get the very narrow win. Oh yeah, I think he could win a lot of fantasy championships this weekend. So I'm going to pick Philadelphia here. Next game here, obviously, for me, a lot of stake in this game still. If a certain result can go one way, obviously not having to rely on it as much anymore. But the Carolina Panthers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, first of all, I really do hope Carolina can win this game and pull off another upset, because then that just makes it a lot better, because then the Falcons could go into Sunday Night Football with an opportunity to clinch the division. I also believe it would clinch Washington a playoff spot if Tampa Bay could lose. But this is one of those spots I gotta put, honestly, what I just think is going to happen over, what I want to happen. I think Tampa Bay is going to win. I do think Tampa Bay to win. I think they're going to come out after that game in Dallas and probably be frustrated and win to hope that, something can happen where they can still get into the playoffs potentially. But Carolina's been playing a lot better. So I think a game you look at maybe earlier in the year and say Tampa Bay wins easily. And these division games can always be tough, but I got to pick Tampa Bay to win. It could be a very spot where he really gets going. He's obviously trying to keep that 1,000-yard streak. Next game, the New York Jets at the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo, they kept New England in the game, but ultimately would end up winning. Obviously, the Bills, if Kansas City wins, I don't know how much this matters to them necessarily, but if they don't, it can matter a lot to them. So ultimately, I am going to pick the Bills to win, and I really don't know if I feel comfortable making this the lock of the week, but I am going to do it anyway. I do feel like if the Bills are playing all their starters, they should come out. They should win this game. It is in Orchard Park, so definitely you like your chances with that. Picking the Bills. I don't know how confident I feel in it being the lock of the week, but next game, the Indianapolis Colts at the New York Giants. And the Giants are terrible on draft pick, which they'd have to keep losing to do that. Indianapolis is trying to keep their some, to make things a little interesting heading into the final week of the year. If they can get it, I would feel like the Colts should win this regardless because the Giants are just so terrible. Next game, the Raiders and the Saints. And, I think we saw it last night. The Saints are not a good team. They did get a win Sunday, but against an equally awful Jacksonville team. I do have to pick the Saints here. I think the Saints should win this handily. It is in the Superdome. The Raiders, it's hard to see them winning this game. So I do think the Saints come out, get this win. You would have to imagine that they're going to put on a solid showing in the final 2 weeks to try and maybe keep Darren Rizzi around another year, fight for his job. It is kind of like what the Raiders were doing last year with Antonio Pierce. But you'd have to imagine that's what New Orleans is going to come out and try to do. So I'm going to pick the Saints here. Next game, you want to talk about another snooze fest. 2, 3, and 12 teams in the AFC South. Major draft implications for this one. The Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, for both teams, it hasn't been a great year. I do think Jacksonville won the first matchup a few weeks ago. On to pick, but I'm actually going to pick the Titans here. I don't know how confident I feel in this, but two awful teams. You really don't know how it's going to, even though it could go either way. I do got to pick the Titans. The Miami Dolphins, their season alive, and they have to do so by going game. And I really feel like, despite the fact that not going to do well in this circumstance, and we've seen it time and time again. So until the Dolphins can actually do it, can go into a cold weather environment and win, I can't put any stock in them doing it. So I got to pick the Browns to win. Next game here, 425, and this is a very Minnesota Vikings. Look, Minnesota's trying to stay alive for the 1 seed. Green Bay, you kind of figure, is locked in to the 6 seed, but still a very important game for both teams. Obviously, this is one of those games you look at and you say it always feels like they're playing for something. So it's going to be a really close game, and it's a tough one to pick. But I do think when you look at it, Minnesota needs it more. Whereas I feel like Green Bay, regardless of really what they do, it's almost certain that they are going to be locked into the number 6 seed. So I got to go ahead and I got to give Minnesota the win here. I do think that Minnesota picks up the win, and they stay alive, potentially hoping for that number 1 seed. where they have a matchup in Detroit the final week of the year that's most likely going to determine it. Next game here, very, very big game for me. Sunday Night Football in Landover, Maryland. The Falcons and the Washington Commanders on Sunday Night Football. Going to be a very, very big game for the Falcons to keep their playoff hopes alive, stay in control of the NFC South. Washington can clinch a playoff spot with a win for the first time since about one of the most exciting Washington teams in a very long time. It's going to be a tough game, and obviously I'll talk a lot about it later in the week, but I do feel like the Falcons are going to win this game. I do feel like the Falcons are going to go into Landover. I feel like if Washington would have lost against Philadelphia, they are in more of a desperate situation than they are right now. As I talk about, there's a scenario where the Falcons could clinch the NFC South. Here, there's a scenario where Washington could go into this game with a playoff spot already wrapped up as a result of Tampa Bay losing. I don't see that happening. So therefore, this game is going to have a lot of meaning to it. And I got it, but I do think the Falcons are going to ultimately pick up the win here and inch closer to their first NFC South division title in 8 years. And wrapping up the holiday week on Monday Night Football, the Detroit Lions at San Francisco. I will say this is a tempting spot to pick an upset because you really don't think about it. But San Francisco, they could come out, they could play this game tough. This could be a game where Brock Purdy makes the statement to the 49ers, you have to pay me. But Detroit's playing for so much. Detroit's obviously playing to be that number one seed to win the NFC North. They're going to have a big matchup for this versus the Vikings that I think is going to determine it all. I saw football I'm going to give Detroit the win here. And obviously that exciting week of games, very exciting for me personally, very exciting for really playoff spots. It's the best time of year, obviously. Christmas can for a lot of us. So with that being said, I will see you all in the next one.